We are on Cape Cod. We're on Cape Cod all week at Centerville Library, and I'm hanging out with Darby Hobbs. Our next guest is Parke Madden from the Weather Store and Paul Madden Antiques.
Thanks for having me on today. The Weather Store is an idea that I had back in 1992, and I was fresh out of college. I come from a family that have always been self-employed retailers or antiques dealers. And so I think I always knew that I was going to be leading towards some sort of a career in retail or starting my own business. So it was on my mind, and I was on the Cape at the time, and we had a business and a building that we were looking to try something new. So there was a lot of brainstorming going on with various types of, what kind of retail business would succeed in Sandwich. And I was sort of looking at, taking a real step back and trying to look at the obvious, what's out there. And one of the thoughts I had was, well, geez, everyone talks about the weather on the Cape. And we had just recently, this is coming off the heels of Hurricane Bob coming through in 1992, as well as there was that big storm event that occurred in the fall as well. That was what they did the Perfect Storm movie all about. So there were two big weather events that occurred on the Cape. And I guess my mind was thinking about the weather, and I started thinking about what my father's business, of being the antiques. He had always had great weather instruments and barometers, antique thermometers, weather vanes, etc. And it was just one of those light bulb moments. And I said, oh, I could do a store about the weather. And, that's interesting. I thought it had lots of different avenues that it could represent. And we started that up in 92 and ran as a retail operation. And as I think anyone knows, on the Cape, retail is a pretty short season.
Yes.
And it did okay. My inventory was thin. I think a lot of retail that start out.
And did you start out with barometers and
I
just
did,
regular
and
weather instruments?
Right, and I had a lot of help from my dad, who was
Yep.
in the antiques business. So he put some of his stuff in there as well, and
Nice.
we had a lot of plants in there as well to take up space. But it really it caught on nicely. I did some radio advertising and a little bit of print advertising, and but one of the things I found out was, I guess I thought that right in the beginning it was going to be a lot of specialists were going to come in. And one of the quick lessons I learned is that the specialists, or the serious weather nuts, so to speak, already have their own equipment. So I found that the people who were buying from me tended to be people who had second homes, people who lived in very exposed areas, people that like the weather, but they don't, they're not going to be reporting to the TV stations or the radio stations per se.
But they wanted to keep track, or
Right.
for their own activities, maybe?
Exactly. Maybe they live in an exposed area near the water, and they feel the wind, how it's hitting their building. They say, I wonder just how windy that is.
Right.
So I pretty quickly found that was my market. So I began to adapt the inventory that I have and make it more towards nice quality instruments that you can not only appreciate for their appearance, but that work reliably well, but not the type of thing that you need to, certainly not the type of thing that you might find like at a weather observatory. So, and that's really how it gained its initial traction.
Parke, if somebody wants to find you and the Weather Store and Paul Madden Antiques, how would they find you?
Well, the best way is the internet, and we're found at theweatherstore.com as well as paulmaddenantiques.com.